So I've had my inspection, now what? My name is Nicole Prigge-Taylor. I'm with Coldwell Banker Central here in Ellensburg, Washington, serving Kittitas County and Yakima County. So you've had your home inspection, you've gotten the report back, we're looking through it, now what? So at this point, it's the buyer's response. This is gonna be your response to the seller saying exactly what path you wanna take. 4 paths. Straight up approval. This is a fairly rare response because this is saying that whatever is on that inspection report, small potatoes, we're moving forward with the transaction. Disapproval. This means that you're going to effectively terminate the agreement, and as long as that disapproval comes in within your inspection timeline, i.e. if you had a 10-day timeline, it happens prior to 9 p.m. on that 10th day or whatever the contract term specifies as the expiration time, you're gonna get your earnest money back and you're gonna just skip off in a different direction because this is not the home for you. Whatever the reason might be, that's a notice. That's a notice, which means you don't need the seller's approval to do either of these. Option 3, you're going to give notice of additional inspection time. The boilerplate language in the Northwest MLS forms is 5 additional business days for you and your agent to come in with contractors based off of what the inspector said within their inspection report. So let's say, let's take the HVAC system, for example. Inspector noted that it looked like the filter was dirty and that there was no record of service. They recommended that a licensed HVAC professional or contractor come in and give an additional opinion on that. That's something that we can bring someone in on and get a bid, get a service if you really want to pay for that, or figure out, what's that cost going to be like? Do we want to negotiate for it? Which brings us to option number 4. So whether you use that additional 5 days or not, the next space, let's say you use that 5 days, the next thing would be negotiating for repairs or modifications. Or let's say you didn't use that space, but you don't want to approve, you don't want to disapprove. The most common response is to negotiate for repairs or modifications. Repairs being seller to, let's keep that example, seller to have licensed and bonded HVAC professional service HVAC system, repair and replace as needed, provide proof of payment. It's like really boring. It's not like super attractive language, but it gets the job done. So that's an example of a repair. A modification would be modifying the terms of something with the finances. So a price reduction. So seller to reduce price to $400,000. Let's say it started at $405,000 to $400,000. Seller to credit buyer $5,000 at closing. Those two would accomplish the same thing from the seller's net proceeds side of things, but very different things from the buyer side of things, because a price reduction, if you are getting a mortgage, is going to reduce your monthly payments by a little bit. A $5,000 closing cost credit, however, is going to keep $5,000 that you were anticipating needing to take to that closing table into your bank account immediately. So if there was a repair that you wanted to have done, seller was willing to have it done as far as was willing to accommodate that repair, but the timeline isn't going to allow for, let's say, a fungal remediation specialist to come in and remediate fungal growth in the attic. There's no time for that, can't get the appointment scheduled, but the seller still wants to accommodate that price point wise. You use that bid and have that credit. That means that the second that you close on the home, you maybe were able to get that person scheduled for, a week or 2 weeks out, and then you pay them out of that credit. So let's review. Approval, disapproval, notice of additional inspection time in order to get contractors in, to get bids, estimates, and a better idea of what thing is wrong and the XYZ of okay, what do we need to do to remediate that, to fix it? Repairs and modifications. That's the first thing that happens. Buyer's response. Seller, boilerplate language in the Northwest MLS forms, is going to get 3 business days starting the day after you deliver that response. So let's say you deliver it on a Monday. They're going to get Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sorry, a little Count Dracula, right? To formulate their response. It doesn't continue on forever, right? So let's say seller responds and they say that they will agree to something different. Let's say you negotiated for repairs, but they only want to do a credit. You get one more response to that. You can counter that and say, no, I really want those repairs done. But that's the final timeline there. Buyer gets one more response. You get 3 more days for you to come up with your response. But by the end of that 3 days, you have to have mutual agreement, or 2 things are going to happen. You're going to terminate the contract, get your earnest money back, and you would have to deliver termination before the end of that 3 days, or seller is going to agree to what you negotiated, what you demanded. Or I guess technically the third option is what would happen is if you don't deliver the disapproval, and if the seller doesn't agree, and you got to do this. If you don't, what's going to happen is the third option is the inspection contingency is going to be considered waived, satisfied, and the transaction carries forth, whether you want to stay in or not. So you're risking a default moment. This is kind of a lot, but we're going to get through it together. Let's start with our first response. We'll talk about the things that are absolute deal breakers for you and the different paths. We're just going to put information on the table, and you decide what path you want to go down and what aligns with your values, with your financial situation and your financial values, and what your vision is for the home. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's talk more about inspections over coffee.